What's up everyone, Kaze no What If is here with What If Naruto had the sharingan. Before we start, if you like the video, like it, share with your friends, comment, and let's start the video. Sakura couldn't remember the trip from Nami back to Konoha. She couldn't remember anything after Sasuke's death, to be honest. She was so emotionally exhausted, her body was working purely on instinct. Her mind felt numb. Numb was the best way to describe it. She had thought so much about everything and nothing at all after Sasuke's death that now she couldn't force herself to think anymore. Is this what grief feels like? Maybe. She had heard everyone grieves differently. Maybe this was her way of dealing with things, not thinking. Denial. It's really hard to describe what's going on through her mind, if there was something going on through her mind. That's probably why she hasn't spoken at all since Sasuke's final words after giving Naruto his eye. Now that she actually starts to think about it, she didn't say anything back then, not even goodbye. She was so shocked about everything she couldn't find it in herself to say goodbye to the person she loves. The Hokage was half listening through his elite Jounin's report. He's a shinobi after all, and shinobi must be able to multitask. So even if he looked like he wasn't really paying attention to him, everyone would be able to tell he was focused on two things at the same time. One of those things clearly was Kakashi's retelling of the events transpired in his team's C rank turned A rank mission. To say the Hokage was already preparing himself to give the gravity-defying silver-haired Jounin an earful about his questionable decision-making was an understatement. That could definitely wait. He was very aware of how gloom the two genin in front of him looked, and he was very aware of the lacking member in the room. Sarutobi Hiruzen hasn't go senile. He's perfectly able to interpret what the absence of one of his genin and the looks on the other two meant. That didn't mean he wanted to accept it, but it had to be done, if appearances were to be believed. Konoha's last loyal Uchiha was killed in action. His head was already starting to hurt just thinking about this. It wasn't long after the old Hokage's musing that Kakashi finished his retelling of the story, including Sasuke's death, much to the chagrin of the old Hokage and his hidden Umbu guards all throughout the room. Those were shocking and concerning news, not much that could be done now. Hiruzen sighed. Naruto-kun, Sakura-chan. You're both dismissed. Sarutobi had half a mind to check on both of them later. Both genin started to leave, but a hand on Naruto's shoulder stopped him from leaving. He looked up to see that hand belonged to his Jounin sensei. Hokage-sama, can you please have the Umbu leave and activate the silencing seals? In the room. There's something important we need to discuss. The Hokage was taken aback by the request but complied either way. With a quick wave of his hand, four masked figures showed themselves in the room and then left through the door. The Hokage then performed some quick hand signs and the corners of the room glowed a light purple before quickly going back to normal. Naruto was impressed by this. He could recognize this was the work of Fuinjutsu, what his clan was the most good at. He never really paid any interest to it because he thought it was boring. What would he know about something like that? He decided he was going to look into it later. His Jiji had given him some material along with some of his family's history after all. What is it you want to talk about, Kakashi? The Jounin's response was motioning Naruto to lift his headband and show the old man his new sharingan eye. The old Hokage just sighed. That headache just started to get worse. This was going to be a long day. Did you half asked the Hokage before being interrupted? No. Kakashi took a deep breath to regain his composure before going on. Sasuke's last wish was for Naruto to take his eye. What I told you about Naruto losing his eye during the battle was completely true. That was what motivated Sasuke to give up his eye when he knew it was too late for him. The Hokage felt like slamming his head on the table, really hard. That headache was already a migraine for Kami's sake. After some time to sort his thoughts, the Hokage looked at both men in his room and gave his instruction. There's other important things I need to discuss with you, but I understand your concerns, Kakashi. The Hokage instructed Naruto to cover his eye and did a few hand signs to deactivate his silencing seal. After doing that, an Umbu stepped in the room and kneeled in front of the Hokage. Please go to the hospital and tell Dr. Teruya I need her here as soon as possible. If she's not doing anything of importance, bring her here yourself. The Umbu just nodded and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Minutes later, the same Umbu reappeared in the office, this time with a disheveled woman by his side. Naruto, let me introduce you to Dr. Kaya Teruya, currently Konoha's most accomplished medic, a highly intelligent woman, completely trustworthy and an old friend of mine. The Hokage graced her with a warm smile, and the blonde boy merely nodded at her. Whatever was going through his mind was clearly eating at him. Teruya-chan, Naruto here lost an eye in his last mission and got a special replacement for it. I need you to look at it and make sure everything's okay with him. You're to speak to absolutely no one about this, is that clear? Yes, Hiruzen-kun, said the woman, giving the old Hokage a wink. Well, Naruto-kun, from now on you are to come to me whenever you have any sort of health-related issue, although I wouldn't mind if you just came to me to talk, okay? The boy once again nodded, and both of them walked out of the door on their way to the hospital. After they both left, Kakashi decided it was time to address his concerns. Hokage-sama, I don't think I'm capable of leading a genin team. His only response was a contemplating stare. The Hokage stood from his chair and motioned the Jounin to follow him as he walked out of the tower. Hiruzen led Kakashi all the way to the memorial stone and stood there just looking at it for a few minutes that felt like hours to Kakashi before speaking. You know, for all the good you are as a shinobi, you're as predictable as they get, meaning he was perfectly aware of Kakashi's intention to disband the team even before the man himself talked to him about it. You let yourself be consumed by grief, and I stood by watching, hoping you'll get over it yourself at some point. Now I see the error of my ways. Silence. There really wasn't much you could say when you were getting an earful from the Kami no Shinobi himself. Sasuke's death was avoidable. I knew from the very beginning Team 7 was not ready to take on a simple C rank. Not because of their lack of skill, which was very lacking, mind you, but because of the inexistent level of maturity they displayed during their time doing simple chores around the village. You could tell when the old Hokage was serious if he himself undignified the dear ranks he has vowed to protect over the years, for whatever reason that is. I allowed you to take on that mission despite my better judgment, even when I knew you were lying through your teeth about them being ready. Now you'll make yourself responsible for this team. No team disbandment? I'm not going to allow your team's disbandment. No. From now on you're being ordered to make sure they get the proper training they deserve. And while I'm already ordering you to do stuff, I must confess I'm growing tired of your attitude, Kakashi, always being late, making up some funny excuse when all you ever do is stand in front of this rock moping about your mistakes and the way this world has done you wrong. That stops today. Along with your team you're going to be getting the counseling you so clearly need. It was honestly a testament for Kakashi's strength how he's been able to stop himself from showing any kind of reaction during the Hokage's rant. Kakashi was not a sentimental man, and that much was obvious. But it takes a mountain of a person to keep yourself standing up when someone as important as Hiruzen Sarutobi is dissecting your very being. Despite it all, Kakashi took it like a champ. He gave the old man a simple but respectful nod and started to walk towards his apartment. I don't think I told you it was okay for you to leave yet. Apparently Sarutobi wasn't yet satisfied with the dressing down he gave him, but there's not much he could do about it. Adding insubordination to his already very large list of flaws wasn't exactly on Kakashi's to-do list. Hiruzen sighed and turned to look at him for the first time since they got here. It was impressive how easy it was to forget how old this legend of a man really was. Kakashi couldn't remember the Sandaime ever looking this old. I'm done chewing at you as the Hokage already, Kakashi, but there's a few things Hiruzen Sarutobi still have left to say to you. Kakashi was already bracing himself for the impact of whatever this man had left to say. I'm sorry. Huh. It is easy to look for someone to blame when situations such as this present themselves, but the truth is, there is no point in looking for someone to place the blame on. Hokage-sama. Please let me finish, Kakashi. I don't blame you, Sakura doesn't blame you, and Naruto doesn't blame you. Kami knows that boy doesn't have it in himself to hold grudges. He forgave this old man for keeping his heritage a secret, after all. It really is hard to explain just how reassuring this man was. The professor was a man as wise as they came. It makes no sense to sugarcoat the truth. Sasuke shouldn't have died, that's for sure, but you're no more guilty for his death than I am for allowing you to go on a mission I knew you weren't ready for. Naruto-kun was very adamant on continuing the mission for whatever it is that he felt like he needed to prove. Is he to blame? Sakura-chan apparently had no sense of self-respect and allowed herself to continue on a mission she wasn't ready for only to please a single boy. Is she to blame? Speaking of the boy, Sasuke made it a point to let everyone know his only ambition in life was revenge and power. Continuing a mission to test himself against worthy opponents clearly wasn't what anyone would call sound logic. Is he to blame? I know what you're thinking, Kakashi. I know you want to take the blame like you always do. I know you feel like it's your responsibility, and I would be lying if I tell you it's not, but you need to learn how to let go, Kakashi. You're clinging on to the ghosts of your past, coming here every single day to stare at the names of those long gone. That's not living. I care greatly for you, my boy, and I know you've been through a lot, said Hiruzen. I didn't order you to continue with the team as a punishment, quite the opposite actually. Do you know why I put Naruto on your team? Asked the old Hokage with a tone Kakashi couldn't quite discern. No, replied the Jounin with a thoughtful look on his face. I figured as much. Naruto shouldn't have been placed on your team. His performance in the academy was very average, nothing to be proud of but nothing to be disappointed of either. Team 7 is always formed by the two top shinobi of the class and the dead last. Admittedly, I refrained from repeating the formula considering how disastrous it has been over the years, but I also thought you both deserved a chance to form a bond. Naruto has no one other than me to call a family, and while I love the boy dearly and I'm beyond honored he chose me to be his grandfather, I am not enough, nor am I going to live forever. He needs to have more people he can rely on, and so do you. I didn't expect you, however, to push him away the farthest. I can't claim to know why you did, and I'm not even sure if you realize you did it, but the truth is you did. Was Kakashi creating a distance between himself and Naruto because he couldn't bear to be so close to someone who looks too much like his sensei? Was he keeping a distance because he couldn't bear the guilt of never making himself present for the son of the man he viewed as a father? Both. I want you to think on this, Kakashi. I want you to make yourself available to your students, especially Naruto. You are both lonely and you both clearly need it. The will of fire still burns in you, my boy, you just need to reignite its flames, said Sarutobi, placing a hand on Kakashi's shoulder. You will keep the team, you will start training them and yourself. In your misery you have allowed yourself to go rusty, he pointed out. Finally, you need to let the souls of the people you're clinging to rest. There's no point in clinging on dead people, you're only hurting both them and yourself. Team 7 has a 2-week vacation. Take the time to think on what I've talked to you about and speak to your students. The Hokage gave the seasoned Jounin one last look and started to walk away, leaving Kakashi to his thoughts. That clearly didn't go anything like Kakashi expected, but he felt like a weight was taken off his shoulders. He had needed to hear that for a long time now, and perhaps the Hokage was right. Rin, Obito, and Minato wouldn't have wanted him to be like this, right? He was starting to feel like he had been doing a disservice to their memory for a long time now, but no more. From now on he would try harder. It just now started weighing on him how wrong he had been pushing people out of his life, but there was no time like the present. I should probably pay a visit to Guy. Oh, I almost forgot, said the Hokage before leaving. I was talking seriously when I ordered you to receive counseling along with your students. All 3 of you need it, especially you, and I know you wouldn't have gone if I didn't order you to. This is a very serious order, I know will help you immensely. You can schedule your own individual appointments tomorrow morning. I'll ask Inoichi to personally oversee your case. Do I make myself clear? Crystal. Hokage-sama, thank you. No need to thank me, I'm only doing what I should have done a long time ago. I'm sorry it took me this long. The old monkey started to leave again, his next objective already in mind, dealing with whatever was going on in the self. Destructive Ninja's head was the top priority, but he needed to make sure his dear grandson was doing okay, at least as close as okay as possible. 2 weeks was definitely not enough to put one's mind at ease. But he truly believed it would do them good to have some one-on-one time with both Inoichi and his wife Tsutsuji. He would know, they did help him and his son mend their relationship after all. How is he doing? Medically speaking, he's in excellent condition, Hiruzen. After I fixed what was left unfinished by Kakashi-kun on his rustic transplant, the boy's healing factor did the rest by itself. She was fascinated when she found out Naruto has a healing factor. Apparently the boy himself wasn't aware of that fact. What surprised her the most was the way it worked. It seemed to be an automatic process, but it was also smart. The damaged tissue around his new eye didn't heal until Dr. Teruya made sure everything was perfect. It was almost like his body knew healing that part without proper intervention could turn out to be counterintuitive. It wasn't something she wouldn't be able to fix herself, but it was still impressive. Oh yes, Uzumakis have a very strong life force and some have some kind of special chakra, in his case a very useful healing factor it would seem. The boy's mother was able to survive injuries that would have been lethal to any other person. That is not to say they were unkillable, nobody really was, they were just notoriously good at surviving life-threatening injuries more often than the common folk. Will he have any problems with his new eye? Highly unlikely. The boy's body assimilated the eye without much problem. I would even go so far as to say he is more in tune with his transplanted eye than Kakashi is with his. Dr. Teruya didn't exactly know the reason why that was, but she guessed it had something to do with his Uzumaki genes. He was of course never going to be able to use the eye like an Uchiha would, but the strain on his chakra network was definitely a lot more smaller than it was for Kakashi. That's great news, Teruya-chan, and it's honestly what I expected. That's not what worries me. Dr. Teruya sighed. He's heartbroken, Hiruzen. He's been cooperating with me during his examination and hasn't complained at all, not even once. He isn't really talking to me, all he says is yes or no whenever I ask him something. Sarutobi was expecting this. He could see the boy in the room in front of him sitting on his bed, facing the window. He looked lost. The Hokage gave his old friend a court nod and walked in the room. I'll become your eyes and see the future for you. Naruto-kun. The whiskered boy was cut from his musing by the old man standing in front of him. He didn't even hear him come in. How long has he been standing there? How long has Naruto been there? Minutes. Hours. How are you feeling, dear? Bad. He's feeling bad, he's feeling guilty, he's feeling stupid, he's feeling unworthy. I'm feeling good, Gigi, just a bit distracted, that's all. He wasn't going to look sad in front of his grandfather, he couldn't let him see how affected he was. That's good, I wouldn't want you feeling that way, seeing as it was Sasuke's fault it all happened. What? Oh? No reaction? I must have gotten it wrong then. Is it Sakura-chan's fault then? I hear she just wanted to keep going to impress Sasuke-kun. Naruto was livid. How dare this stupid old man come to him only to blame his teammate for Sasuke's death? Wadash. Her either? Then it must have been Kakashi's fault. He was in charge after all, he was the one who chose to keep on doing the mission. Naruto flinched at the accusation, his rage temporarily interrupted. It was him and Sasuke who begged Kakashi to continue the mission. He wanted to prove himself he wasn't a coward. Naruto unknowingly gave Sarutobi exactly what he was looking for with the way he reacted to his last words. It pained him greatly to rile his surrogate grandson this way, but it had to be done. He needed to let his frustrations out. Oh. I see it now, it was your fault. It wasn't. You convinced him to continue with the mission, you wanted to do it right? It was all you. Hiruzen couldn't finish his speech due to an enraged Naruto lunging forward intent on shutting him up and hurting him a lot in the process. Naruto didn't stand a chance. The Hokage grabbed the fist coming towards him with one of his hands and twisted the boy's arm, then he turned the boy to look at him and he could see the tears flowing in his cheeks. He let the hand go and smiled warmly at him. Naruto hugged the old man and let himself cry on his shoulder. I'm sorry Jiji, I didn't mean to, I didn't. It's alright my boy, I know you didn't mean it and I know it wasn't your fault. Jiji, I didn't want Sasuke to die. I am sorry. I know you didn't want him to die. Naruto, you need to stop blaming yourself. If you really want to blame someone for this, you can blame me. The boy stiffened and turned to look at the man he viewed as his grandfather, face asking for an explanation. I knew your team wasn't ready for a C rank and I shouldn't have allowed you to go no matter what Kakashi thought. Naruto just hugged the man tightly and let the tears keep on falling. He just couldn't understand how the old man was blaming himself for his death. It wasn't why your fault, Jiji, explained Naruto between sobs. Sarutobi knew Naruto wasn't capable of holding a grudge, but it was truly surprising to see how huge his heart really was. I'm sorry I said what I said, Naruto-kun, you're not to blame and neither are your teammates. Sasuke knew the risks and was as excited as you were. I knew you wouldn't have opened up to me and would have kept your guilt to yourself otherwise. That's not good. You need to let what's eating you out and you need to let people help you. Can you forgive me? Naruto nodded once again with tears still falling from his eyes. He didn't cry after the battle on the bridge, he didn't cry when he buried Zabuza and Haku, he didn't cry when he made Sasuke's memorial, and he didn't cry on the way back to Konoha. This really felt like a weight was lifted off his shoulders. Naruto tried to convince himself it wasn't his fault over and over again, but he just couldn't. Having his Jiji tell him exactly what he's been needing to hear was relieving. They stayed like that, hugging on the bed for as long as Naruto needed. When he finished crying, he was so exhausted mentally and physically that he fell asleep on the spot. The Hokage just stood up and placed the boy back in his hospital bed to get his well-deserved rest. Uzumaki Naruto was truly something else. It had been a day since Hiruzen and Naruto had that very important conversation in the boys' hospital room. Much to Naruto's dismay, he was forced by Dr. Teruya to stay another day so she could watch and closely monitor his condition. She didn't understand much about Naruto's healing factor and neither did Hiruzen. He had explained to her that Uzumakis have peculiar chakra and it manifests in different ways. Sensor abilities were not unheard of for them, and the old Hokage had thought that was Naruto's quirk when it presented itself. Apparently he was wrong. Still, both seniors decided to play it safe and Naruto stayed one more day. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. Naruto's condition was not what was troubling the old man. Upon asking Naruto about his remaining teammate, he found out she hadn't visited him during his stay in the hospital. It was then he remembered Kakashi telling him she hasn't spoken a single word since Sasuke died. Hiruzen had to do something about that. The old Hokage strongly believed caring about every single shinobi under his command was his duty, and a young and troubled Kunoichi needed his help, so he would provide. After informing Naruto of his upcoming counseling sessions with Yamanaka Tsutsuji, Hiruzen made his way to the office. He needed to find the girl's address after all. The Kami no Shinobi didn't know everything. I can't remember much of what's been going on these days. We returned from Nami. When did we return? It feels like weeks, months even. It also feels like it was just this morning. Inner has been silent ever since he died. Is she not talking to me because I'm not talking? Maybe she's mad at me because I couldn't help anyone. Is she mad at me because I couldn't save him? A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. Nothing new about that. Toyu-san and Kaya-san will sometimes come and try to get me out of the room to have lunch with them. I never understood why they wanted me to eat that badly. Couldn't they see I'm dieting so he will? Oh, right. I keep forgetting about that. This time I will humor them. Maybe if I go down to eat this one time they'll leave me alone. I walked up to the door and slowly opened it to see an old man wearing white robes with red stripes on them, and a red hat with a white tip and the kanji for fire marked on it. The Hokage. What was he doing here? Did he come to release me of my duties? Did he realize how pathetic I really am and is going to berate me for my failure? How are you doing, Sakura-chan? Asked the Hokage. That wasn't what I was expecting. What is he playing at? I talked to Naruto-kun today. He said you hadn't visited him at the hospital. He thinks you're angry at him and you blame him for what happened. I was stunned. I couldn't believe Naruto would think that. All this time I avoided him because I didn't want to face him after everything that happened. I know it was my fault and I just couldn't stand the thought of him or Kakashi-sensei being angry at me. You know, Naruto blames himself for everything. He thinks it was his fault for convincing Kakashi to continue the mission. How could that idiot think that? It was Kakashi who made the decision in the end. For all we know he could have just asked us for the sole purpose of letting us think we had a voice in the matter. And even if we managed to convince him, it was my fault for not telling them how scared I was. I just didn't want to disappoint him. I hear you haven't been talking to anyone. We all grieve differently, but I hardly think isolation is a wise choice. I was hoping you would open up to me. I guess I could order you to speak up to me. You're an active shinobi and I am your Hokage, but that would be rude, wouldn't it? The old man chuckled. In all truth, I don't know why I stopped talking. When it all happened I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't find it in myself to speak up. After we got back I was so tired of thinking that I just couldn't form any coherent form of thoughts, let alone words. Now I just got used to it, I think. It's funny. The people who know me would be pretty weirded out by me not talking at all. I did make a name for myself by talking a little too much, almost as much as Naruto. Not that they would know since I haven't left this place. Do you really blame him, Sakura? No. I didn't even have time to think. No matter how much I wanted to keep it all for myself, how much I wanted to just be alone, there's no way I will let Naruto blame himself for his death. It's good to hear your voice again, Sakura-chan. The Hokage gave me the warmest smile I have ever seen. Scratch that. The way Naruto smiled at the orphans back in Nami whenever he played with them or got them gifts was probably as warm as the sun. Even if it's a little loud for these old bones. I couldn't help but blush. It wasn't my intention to yell at the Hokage and it probably wasn't wise to do so. But I wouldn't let Naruto's grandfather think I hate him. I am sorry, Hokage-sama. Don't be. I'm glad to be the one you were able to open up to, even if it took a little goading on my part. The effect that man's smile has on me is incredible. They should probably add the counselor to his titles. Do you know what it means to be a shinobi, Sakura-chan? I honestly don't know why he asked that question, but I can't help but feel that the answer is important. Being a shinobi means to fight and die for one's village. Feels like the obvious answer, but I really can't be sure. It's moments like this that make me miss Inner. She at least always had some input. A shinobi is one who endures. He must have seen me struggling to find an answer. Being a shinobi means to endure. Sometimes I feel like I ask stupid questions, but I can't stop myself from doing so anyway. That's right. It means enduring for one's sake, to fight every day for the good of your village knowing it could be your last day. It means to protect, to fight for those whom we hold dear and give our lives for what we love if it means keeping it safe. And finally, it means to be burdened. It means to carry on despite what you lost, to protect the dreams of those we lost and hope to make the path to achieve them. To be so wise and powerful. It makes you wonder just what this man has gone through. I understand what you lost, Sakura-chan, and I can guarantee you're not the only one to have lost the one you love. I would have asked him how he knew about my love for him, but I guess the Hokage knows what he needs to know. It's not like I kept it a secret. An old friend once told me that this type of wound never really closes and you never really forget, but that's okay, it means they are still inside of you. It means he is still being kept safe in the bottom of your heart. I don't know when I started crying and I don't know what possessed me to hug the man in front of me, but I don't regret it. He makes me feel safe. I can really see why Naruto talks so highly of him. It's okay, Sakura-chan, let it all out. You need to understand it wasn't your fault. Everyone played their part in young Sasuke's death, looking for someone to blame just isn't worth it. I keep seeing him lying on the floor, there was so much blood I couldn't. Why can't I stop crying, damn it? It makes no sense to blame yourself for this, you lacked the training to even attempt to help him. He accepted it and moved on. If he found the strength to give Naruto-kun a piece of himself before moving on to the pure world, why can't you? This man was speaking nothing but the truth. I have to be strong for him, I have to be strong for Sasuke. Some minutes passed and I released him from my embrace after I calmed down. Go see your teammate Sakura-chan, he needs as much reassurance as you do, the only way you'll both move on and grow from this is together. Speaking of Naruto, I already talked to him about this, but starting next week, the whole team, and that includes Kakashi, will be having counseling sessions. I believe it's for the better and I know for a fact Satsuji-san is a lovely lady. How can I deny him after what he's done for me in so little time? It would do us good to find a healthy mechanism to cope. I never noticed when he left, that's a shinobi for you, but I'm grateful for it. I need a moment for myself, but after I finish getting my business back in order I need to go to the hospital. There's someone I need to hug. I really like Satsuji-san, she's very kind and doesn't pressure me into saying things I'm not comfortable with, you know, said Naruto after getting out of today's therapy session. They have been getting counseling from Satsuji for a little over a week now. Sakura would go one day, Naruto the other, and then they'll both get a session together. Kakashi had even been a part of this one, but he left as soon as it was over because the Hokage called all the Jounin in charge of a team to a meeting. Yes, she's really nice to me too, replied Sakura with a warm smile. These sessions had helped her out of her shell and had helped her calm her urges down, although they would resurface from time to time. It had also helped both her and Naruto to cement a healthy relationship with one another. It was no secret Naruto has had the biggest crush on her since the academy, but she, being completely in love with Sasuke, would have never returned his feelings. Said feelings also led her to be rude and insensitive towards Naruto, going so far as to hit him and abuse him constantly. Satsuji, however, had talked to her about it in one of her individual sessions, and after making her see the error of her ways, Sakura was very sorry and full of regret for the way she treated her kind and lovely teammate. That's why she apologized and made peace with him in their first shared session under Satsuji's watchful gaze and started a friendship. Sakura wasn't ready to pursue a relationship, let alone love someone anytime soon, and Naruto just didn't feel like it was right anymore. He felt like it was a disservice to Sasuke's memory to do so, even if he wouldn't have minded at all. Naruto still thought Sakura was a beautiful and amazing girl like no other and liked her very much, but the situation wasn't the same anymore. At least for the time being, they both were good with being friends. I think I'll learn the guitar. What about you, Sakura-chan? Asked Naruto. Satsuji had just told them it was important to have a way to cope out with the strain of their line of work. She explained all shinobi get one at some point, but she would prefer it if they leaned towards a healthy one, so she suggested they learn how to play an instrument. I've always wanted to play the piano. Both teens went to the music store and bought their respective instruments and what they needed to properly take care of them without much problem. Sakura got her piano in a ceiling scroll while Naruto got his guitar in a black case, nothing fancy. The blonde offered to store Sakura's piano in his apartment since he didn't have much stuff and space wasn't an issue, so after they got their respective things they walked together towards Naruto's place, each sporting their new outfit. After their first session together they both decided they would become more serious about being shinobi. Sakura wanted something more functional and she said that while orange wasn't a problem, Naruto's hideous jumpsuit was, so they went to a shinobi clothing store together. Sakura was now wearing high black shinobi sandals, tight black shorts covered by a beige skirt, a mesh undershirt with sleeves just past the elbow and a red sleeveless blouse with cherry blossoms in it. She also got herself a new haircut and was now wearing her hair shoulder length. Her headband's cloth was now red. A kunai holster in her right leg and her tool pouch on her lower back. Naruto now wore high black shinobi sandals, black umbu-style pants tied in the heels with bandages, a short-sleeved mesh shirt and an open short orange jacket with sleeves just past his elbows. The cloth of his headband was now black and at the moment he wore it the same way Kakashi did to cover his sharingan eye. He however didn't want to look like his teacher, so he was going to grow his hair enough so that it would cover the eye on its own. A kunai holster in each leg. Sakura had just pointed out yesterday that Naruto didn't seem to favor any hand, and a tool pouch on his lower back. "Well, that seems to be it," said Naruto after both him and Sakura finished setting up the piano in his living room. They managed to assemble it without much trouble, following the manual's instructions without any extra pieces. Sakura-chan, after we both learn our instruments we can teach the other, and we can also sing together, just the two of us, you know. Sakura was really liking having Naruto as a friend and regretted not approaching him sooner. The way he just cared for her well-being and how he's just naturally kind to others made her feel safe. She also wanted to know if the boy was a good singer. Yes. Yes, I would like that very much. Naruto-kun. Chapter 4. A tall man with a long ponytail could be seen walking through the streets of Konoha, white hair swaying as he walked. This man was Jiraiya, one of the Densetsu no Sunin. His destination? The Hokage Tower. The old Hokage had summoned him for a special meeting regarding his neglected responsibility. What that meant was everyone's guess. Hiruzen was very fond of his more reliable and trusted student. Ever since Orochimaru's deflection, the student and teacher duo has grown closer, even if the student was rarely in the village, but still. The sentiment was there. What Hiruzen meant by neglected responsibility was of course one Uzumaki Naruto. He was the godfather of the boy after all. While the title didn't carry much weight or obligation other than being the one to name the child, Jiraiya was very close to the boy's father and saw him as the son he never had. That should have counted for something. Hiruzen was very aware of Jiraiya's service for the village as their spymaster and as such, would have never forced him to stay to raise a single child. That didn't mean he couldn't stop by sometime and spend some time with the kid. Kami knows the boy grew up lonely enough. He did send that frog wallet Naruto loves carrying around. He thought. Maybe he was being a little harsh on the man, he just couldn't fathom the logic behind his actions after the death of Minato. Either way, the man was damn good at his job and the Hokage wouldn't argue with results. No use crying over spilled milk. Hiruzen took the place that he felt should have been Jiraiya's and he doesn't regret it one bit. As far as he knew, Naruto was his grandchild. Family means more than merely blood to him and nothing could change that. The reason for the meeting was however more important than just Naruto. Very few people were aware of the truth behind the Uchiha massacre, and Jiraiya, being the Hokage's most trusted advisor, was one of them. Uchiha Itachi needed to be informed of his brother's demise and Hiruzen needed Jiraiya to get in contact with him. It would do the village good to actually learn something of the organization he infiltrated so long ago. The old Hokage was busy doing his paperwork like he always was. Paperwork was truly the bane of his existence. He just couldn't figure out how Minato managed to always have a clean and free desk. On his right, waiting for the meeting to start, were two of his old teammates and advisors, the famous Konoha elders Homura and Koharu. There used to be 3 of them, but after one diminished his authority and went behind his back to order the extermination of the Uchiha by one of their own, he completely lost his trust. Trust that should have never been placed on him. Shimura Danzo committed countless crimes on what he believed to be the greater good of Konoha. Hiruzen thought he was a petulant child obsessed with power he could not possess. Everything's a matter of perception. A knock on the door stopped the Hokage's musing. "Come in," ordered the man with his usual calm and collected voice. Not long after the white-haired Sunin stepped in the office, he took a look at his surroundings. Jiraiya immediately realized whatever this meeting was about had to be serious upon noticing the presence of both elders at his sensei's side. "Jiraiya-kun, nice seeing you use the door," joked the old Hokage. It was true he always opted to use the window as his preferred method of entering the man's office, but he was so focused on thinking about the meeting's possible topic of discussion he didn't notice what he was doing until he was in front of the man. "Well, sensei, you know me, always one for the unpredictable," the Hokage chuckled at the man's response and smiled warmly at him. It was truly good to see him again. "We'll begin shortly, we're still waiting on someone else to sh. A poof of smoke suddenly revealed a silver-haired man standing in the middle of the office. "Yo!" The Hokage chuckled again, this time at the elite Jounin and his carefree attitude. "Oh Kakashi, it's nice to see you show up on time." The Hokage knew very well the reason behind the man showing up on time, but still couldn't pass up the opportunity to jab at him. "I decided to change things up a little as per your suggestion, Hokage-sama," explained the Jounin while giving the Hokage and everyone present in the room one of his eye smiles. Jiraiya would have usually greeted the man and talked with him about the incredible work of art that is his Ika Ika book series, but his sudden appearance and the fact the Hokage was waiting on him was making the perverted Sunin question the nature of this meeting. Hiruzen seemed to have caught up on this because he immediately cleared his throat and started. "The reason for this meeting is to discuss the recent death of Konoha's last loyal Uchiha and the whereabouts of one Uchiha Itachi," proclaimed the Hokage, much to the Jounin's confusion. Kakashi perked up at the name of his old colleague turned traitor. "Itachi? What you're about to learn, Kakashi, is an S-class secret and arguably Konoha's darkest secret. The only people aware of this, with the exception of 2, are all present in this room," explained the Hokage, the gentleness in his voice now gone. In his place was the voice of a leader and a seasoned commander that led this village to a victory in 2 wars. "Is there a reason we're telling the Gaki about this, sensei?" Jiraiya understood why the boy's death was important to the village and by extension Itachi, but he failed to understand why or how Kakashi was involved in all this. He was also pretty sure Itachi was very much aware of his brother's death by now. Naturally, Kakashi is not only the shinobi in this village I trust the most, but is also the Jounin sensei in charge of Sasuke's team. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at that. He, of course, knew Sarutobi had tried to make Kakashi a sensei more than once. He also knew Kakashi failed every single team he ever got. Jiraiya knew his sensei wouldn't have forced Kakashi to train Sasuke just because of his sharingan, which meant the Jounin willingly passed a team. Was involving Kakashi merely a formality? Who are the other members of his team? For some reason he couldn't quite understand, the self-proclaimed super pervert was dreading asking that question. Kakashi answered before the Hokage could, giving Jiraiya a side glance. A civilian-born girl by the name of Haruno Sakura and Uzumaki Naruto. The copycat ninja was aware of the man's relationship to the boy's father, so he knew he would instantly recognize that name. "Oh," was all the response he could give. Back to the matter at hand, Kakashi, I will now explain to you the truth behind the Uchiha massacre and why we need to find Itachi. After the Kuwabai incident, rumor spread that it was an Uchiha after the attack. It was made stronger because the Uchiha didn't aid in battle against it. However, the truth is that they weren't allowed to because of their duty as the military police force required them to aid in evacuating the villagers and little more. Shouldn't they have been allowed to aid after they were done? It was a massive attack, said Kakashi. That it was, answered Hiruzen with a grim look. Evacuating the civilians took a lot of time and effort. By the time they were done, Minato had already teleported the Kyuubi out of the village. Kakashi and his generation were forbidden to aid in the battle against the Kyuubi. The older shinobi knew it was going to be the end for the lot of them. They wouldn't have risked the future of the village. What about the civilians they helped evacuate? He asked. The civilian population wouldn't have been able to fully understand what was going on at the time, answered Koharu. Even if they knew they were being saved by the Uchiha, that's what made it easy for the rumor to grow. At the time I didn't know it, but I was later informed that it was orchestrated by Danzo, my former teammate, interrupted Hiruzen. I allowed the trust of the village for the Uchiha to fall to the point of almost disappearing. Danzo pushed for the amount of Uchiha performing as active duty shinobi of the village to be lowered to levels around the dozens, while every other was bound to the village as a member of the police, and it all happened because I let it. They were stripped from every position of power they held, and I allowed everything to happen because I was too blind to the truth lying in front of me. Nothing pains me more than knowing everything that followed was primarily my fault. Years of mistrust and abuse led the Uchiha to a stalemate, and the only solution they could find was revolution. The Uchiha started planning a coup d'état and assigned Itachi to spy on us. They counted on the advantages being an Umbu captain granted him to their favor. Itachi, however, was a shinobi loyal to the bone. He along with Shisui informed us of their plans, and we started working on a peaceful solution for it. They both started to work as double spies for us. Shisui told us of a special jutsu he called Koda Amatsukami. It was apparently the special trait of his Manjikyo Sharingan, an incredibly powerful genjutsu he assured was both undetectable by anything other than a dojutsu and unbreakable. He planned to use it on Fugaku to stop the insurrection from happening. Sadly, not long after that Shisui committed suicide. I of course don't believe such a thing, and I know Danzo was involved in it, but have no way to prove otherwise. Why would he even do such a thing? Asked a troubled Kakashi. That is the question, isn't it? I can't claim to understand his motives or what he wished to gain from it, answered Hiruzen. Days after Shisui's demise, Danzo approached Itachi behind my back and convinced him that wiping out the Uchiha was the only way to stop a civil war from happening. I'm sure you can figure out the rest yourself. And Itachi? Started Kakashi. Itachi was branded an S-class missing nin and was ordered to infiltrate an organization Orochimaru was a part of. The only thing he asked from us after everything he had been put through was that we took care of his brother, said Hiruzen, answering Kakashi's question before he even had the time to ask. Hokage-sama I-. Don't Kakashi. Itachi knew very well the risks of being a shinobi. He wanted to protect Sasuke from the dangers that reside within this village, and I made sure that danger never even got close to him. Kakashi's shoulder tensed up, although his expression remained looking stoic. Don't blame yourself for this too. I understand, replied the Jounin, his head bowing slightly. But Kakashi looked outside the office's window, a conversation with his student fresh on his memory. Can I ask you something, sensei? Asked Naruto seriously. Kakashi looked confused by the boy's sudden mood change but complied nonetheless. Whatever it was Naruto needed to ask was clearly important to him. Sasuke, he asked me to avenge them. Trailed off the boy, not sure of how he was going to ask the question or what the question he needed to ask really was. He meant the man who massacred the Uchiha, right? He wants me to kill his brother, right? Kakashi was completely taken aback by this. Why is Naruto even asking him this? Shouldn't the Hokage be the better candidate to ask these questions? Kakashi nodded his head slowly, stealing a glance to the fidgeting boy. That does seem to be the case. Do you think I do it, sensei? Kakashi flinched unnoticeably. He didn't want his late student's last wish to be ignored, but he knew better. He knew what revenge could do to a person. He decided he was going to be honest with Naruto. Revenge. Interesting concept, wouldn't you agree? Naruto wasn't expecting that answer from his sensei. His head tilted to the side slightly and narrowed his eyes as if it would help to better understand Kakashi's words. Seeing his students struggle, Kakashi decided to explain things differently. I spent some time with Sasuke talking about the same thing. To him it wasn't a matter of if he should do it but rather when. Kakashi looked at Naruto and I smiled. I never managed to convince him not to. Why would you try to convince him not to avenge his clan? Asked Naruto. Jiraiya-sama used to say hatred only brings more hatred. I always knew I wouldn't be able to convince him not to, but I had hoped that I would convince him to do it differently. Explained Kakashi. What do you mean, sensei? Sasuke only had one friend. He only had one person he was close to, and that person was you. Kakashi explained further. Do you know why, Naruto? The boy shook his head. Sasuke's only goal was to avenge his clan. He let himself be blinded by hatred and chose to live a life of solitude for his self-imposed mission. Kakashi put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. For you he made an exception. So you're saying I shouldn't continue Sasuke's mission? Whether you continue with his mission is completely up to you, but Kakashi I smiled at him again. What good is the mission if we lose ourselves in it? Sasuke asked Naruto to carry on his revenge. I believe Naruto intends to honor his wishes, said Kakashi without looking away from the sky. That is interesting, trailed off Hiruzen. Not much we can do about it, I'm afraid. I will honor my agreement with Itachi. We owe him that much. Shouldn't we tell Naruto then? I'm sure he won't say anything if we explain why it's important, asked Kakashi. Itachi wished to be the one to carry the Uchiha's burden. He intended for Sasuke to be the one to redeem the clan. He never said it, but I believe Itachi wished to be killed by him, said Hiruzen. So you want Naruto to take his place? Asked the Jonin. What I want isn't important. What Naruto-kun ends up doing about it will be completely up to him. It is your job as his sensei to guide him in the right path, Kakashi, said Hiruzen in a stern voice. Kakashi realized what the Hokage said was true. He thought Naruto should be aware at least that Itachi wasn't an evil killer. He would respect the last Uchiha's wishes though. The Hokage was right, they all owed him at least that much. Seeing as that topic was over, the tallest man in the room decided to keep moving the conversation forward. So you want me to locate Itachi and inform him of his brother's demise, sensei? Jiraiya couldn't see why such a meeting was necessary for this task, especially because he had no doubt Itachi already knew about it. Why was he called here just to discuss that? Yes and no, I also want you to get every bit of information he has on this Akatsuki. Itachi hasn't informed us of anything useful about them, explained Hokage. So it's more than just a formality. I understand Jiraiya-sama's place in all this, but I don't really get why I am even being told about this. Kakashi was very confused. He was honored to be the Hokage's most trusted shinobi, but he just couldn't understand why he needed to be there. Surely just being Sasuke's sensei didn't mean he had to know about Itachi. I was getting there. Kakashi, I want you to assist Jiraiya. I plan on establishing a safe way of communication between Itachi and the village. Jiraiya can't focus solely on that while there's other pressing matters he needs to investigate. You'll become Itachi's handler of sorts, explained the Hokage. That made a lot of sense to both Jiraiya and Kakashi. Itachi's information has been very limited so far, but Hiruzen knew he would have to find a way to convey that information without much trouble. There was no one else in the village that could take the perverted Sunin's place for this. There's also The door of the office suddenly burst open and in walked a heavily bandaged man with a cane. "Hokage-sama, what is this troubling news about the Uzumaki boy stealing a sharingan?" Sarutobi narrowed his eyes for a moment before regaining his composure. He could use this to his favor. It wasn't like Danzo to slip up like this, and it was important he took this opportunity. "Pray tell just how exactly you know about this, Danzo? I seem to remember that information being a very guarded secret known to just 5 people, all sworn to secrecy. Are you perhaps spying on me?" inquired Hiruzen. He of course knew he was being spied on, but there was no way for him to prove Root's existence after he ordered the Warhawk to disband it years ago. "I don't know what you're talking about, old friend. I am an esteemed member of this village. Is it too hard to believe that I just happened to hear about it?" Danzo knew Hiruzen couldn't prove his accusations. Funnily enough, he did just happen to hear about it when he was visiting a family member in the hospital. It would surprise many people how much you can find out if you disguise one of your agents as a nurse. The boy didn't steal anything. Young Sasuke was his friend and willingly chose to give up his eye before dying to replace the one Naruto lost in battle, explained Hiruzen. He knew Danzo was playing him and decided to move the conversation forward instead of falling into provocation. Feelings such as friendship are a hindrance to the shinobi way. "I don't remember asking for your opinion, Danzo," interrupted Hiruzen, his voice dripping venom when speaking the man's name. The tension in the room was palpable for everyone, but no one dared speak a word. They all knew Hiruzen was more than capable of handling the other without much trouble. Homura and Koharu were conflicted. Before the Kuwabai incident they both were supporters of Danzo's ideals but started to turn to a more neutral ground after they saw the man for what he really was. Koharu however completely turned over to Hiruzen and Jiraiya after Kushina's death. While they were never really close, she was very fond of the redhead and wanted to help her son as much as possible. Which she did. While she never made herself present in the boy's life, she made a point to make it a bit easier. That's why when Hiruzen mentioned Naruto wanted to live on his own, she provided a decent-sized apartment for a single person in a shinobi building where he would always be guarded. "I'm going to tell you this just once. If something happens to Naruto or his eye, I will hold you accountable. Don't try to play games with me. I would recognize your handiwork anywhere. Now leave my office." "You interrupted a meeting you were not invited to." "How rude of me, I didn't realize I was interrupting," said the man in a voice so stoic it came off as mocking. "I'll be on my way now." Danzo didn't lose anything in this encounter. He wasn't interested in the boy's eye. He already had more than enough Sharingan. It would have been nice to get his hands on him. He showed much promise as an asset for the village. The boy was out of his reach though, and it would cause him more trouble than it was worth to make an attempt on him now. He was only there because he wanted to know if what he heard was true. To think Konoha's so-called last loyal Uchiha is now dead. What would Itachi think if he found out his dear brother had an eye stolen? He wonders. It truly is a pity that Itachi wouldn't believe a word he says. What truly is a concern for Danzo is what the Uchiha would do now that his brother is dead. It would seem like preparations for a possible conflict are in order. In any way, now that he revealed his card, he would have to pull out his agent from the hospital. There's no way Hiruzen wouldn't run a thorough background check on everyone there now. After the Warhawk left, the old Hokage turned to address his student and teammates. "That was what I was going to talk to the both of you about. Don't worry about it. Kakashi and I are aware it won't remain a secret forever, but for now the less people that know about it the better." He then analyzed everyone in the room for a while and nodded to himself. Some things needed to be taken care of. "The meeting is over. Kakashi, Koharu, and Jiraiya, stay with me for a little while. There's something concerning Naruto I need to talk to you about." Homura took that as his cue and swiftly left the office. "Kakashi, I've been thinking a lot lately and I have decided I will allow you to inform Naruto of his father and your relationship to him if you wish." declared the Hokage much to the surprise of the men present in the room. But sensei I've made my decision Jiraiya, Naruto is more than ready to keep the secret and the boy deserves to know the truth, if anyone here has a right to tell him it's Kakashi. Jiraiya didn't reply to that. He was supposed to be the one to tell him but he didn't plan on it anytime soon. Jiraiya might have died without ever telling the boy. You're welcome to approach the boy before you leave the village if you wish. Kakashi has a meeting with them after this is all over and I'm sure he'll get to it sometime today, right Kakashi? Asked Hiruzen, but Kakashi knew it was an order. Yes Hokage-sama, answered the Jounin. Even if he didn't show it, Kakashi was internally dodging bullets. He was told Jiraiya was the one who would tell Naruto when he felt the time was right and never gave the notion much thought. What was bothering him was what Naruto would think of him. Kakashi was never told he couldn't approach Naruto when he was younger, and he was recently told Naruto was placed on his team for the sole purpose of them getting to know each other. Kakashi pushed Naruto away and he was now painfully aware of that fact. Will Naruto hate him after he finds out? There was however a light of hope in Kakashi's lone visible eye. To be able to tell the boy about his father felt right. Kakashi considered this an honor, so he would do it, no questions asked. There's other things we need to discuss, said the Hokage, interrupting his and everyone's thoughts. I'm growing suspicious of Danzo every passing day. He truly cares about Konoha, but his methods are very questionable. Hiruzen knew the two most loyal shinobi this village ever produced very well. One of those two is Danzo. We need evidence, solid evidence of his wrongdoings. Hiruzen sighed, looking at the people gathered around him. It pains me dearly to say this, but we need to get rid of him. Naruto and Sakura could be seen walking out of the pink-haired girl's favorite tailor shop. This morning, after their last shared meeting with Tsutsuji for the foreseeable future, Naruto told her he felt like his new outfit didn't feel his yet. He liked it very much, but it was still lacking something. After some time he figured out his new clothes didn't have the Uzumaki crest anywhere. Sakura of course accompanied the blonde home to get all his newly bought jackets so he could get them done. It was then she had a really good idea. They had been looking for some time for a way to always carry Sasuke with them, and Naruto just gave her a great idea. That was why Naruto now had a big Uzumaki swirl on the back of his jacket, and both him and Sakura now sported an Uchiha fan on top of their left chests right above their hearts. It wasn't much, but they both thought it was fitting. Sasuke wouldn't have wanted something big anyway. He was a rather simple guy. Oi! Forward! Called out a blonde girl that was now rushing towards the both of them, accompanied by a chubby boy and a boy with black hair tied in a high messy ponytail. Sakura immediately recognized them as Yamanaka Ino, Akimichi Koji, and Nara Shikamaru, the current Team 10 and the newest Ino Shikacho formation. Hey guys! Greeted Naruto before both girls started bantering with each other. Naruto was fond of the boys in Team 10, they were never really friends in the academy days, but they had always been nice to each other. He had no real relationship with Ino, but they were civil. Naruto! You got new clothes, I'm glad you got rid of that hideous jumpsuit, said Ino. Hee, was it really that bad? Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly. Yes it was. Sakura helped me pick the new look. After what happened we both felt like we needed to change some stuff, you know. Naruto said as Ino analyzed his new outfit from every position. And why are you wearing your headband that way, trying to look like that Kakashi guy? Questioned Ino, regretting instantly having opened her mouth. No, I lost an eye in the mission. Naruto was looking a bit gloomy after that, but he couldn't exactly explain why to them, so he quickly dismissed the thought. Ino flinched instantly when she noticed Naruto's reaction. She didn't wish to hurt him or Sakura. But I'll let my hair grow to cover it and look super awesome to be, proclaimed Naruto, making sure to get the conversation away from the gloomy topic. Shikamaru was honestly surprised. Everyone had heard about what happened in Nami by now. He had honestly been expecting Naruto and Sakura to be broken and sad. He hadn't really been expecting to see them at all anytime soon. "You look well, Naruto," said Shikamaru. The whiskered boy didn't really expect a compliment to come from Shikamaru of all people and got a bit flustered because of it. Thanks," said Naruto, cheeks a hint of red. That of course wasn't what Shikamaru meant, and it was now obvious to him by the looks everyone was giving him and the blushing Naruto that maybe he could have worded it better, but it was too troublesome to clarify what he really meant, so he just kept on going. "I'm not trying to be rude, but I expected you both to look more sad," said Shikamaru. "We are, but we both realized Sasuke wouldn't have wanted us to be crying over him. Tsutsuji-san has also helped us both a lot to better come to terms with what happened," explained Sakura. "Your mom's really nice, Ino," proclaimed Naruto. Ino knew both of his parents were giving her old friend and fellow blonde counseling sessions, and she was honestly glad they were getting help. She also couldn't help but agree with Naruto. Her mom had also helped her get over Sasuke's death after all. "Well, I'm glad that's the case, Sakura," said Ino in a caring voice that hadn't been directed at the other girl in a long time. "Kakashi-sensei and us have a meeting soon, so we should be leaving. It was nice seeing you guys." Before they left, Ino approached Sakura by herself while the boys did the same with Naruto. "We should hang out sometime, Sakura, you know, for old time's sake," said a smiling Ino. "Yes, I would like that," replied Sakura with a gentle smile of her own. "Ani Naruto, Koji, and I often hang out at my house. You should join us sometime," said Shikamaru. He was honestly surprised with the boy. Whatever Tsutsuji had talked to him about clearly helped him a lot. His kind and bubbly personality was clearly still there, but he now looked more focused and calm. "I would like that, thanks Shikamaru," replied Naruto with a warm and sincere smile for both boys. An old friendship had just now started to reignite while a true and new one started to surface. "I made mistakes." That wasn't what both genin thought their sensei was going to say when he summoned them for a meeting, but they still went along with it. This looked important. "We already talked about this, so there's no point in going much further into this, but we lost a teammate. It was avoidable, it shouldn't have happened, but it did. I can understand the Hokage's words. I understand it wasn't my fault. Sasuke knew the risk. Sasuke wanted to continue. Sasuke was a shinobi," explained Kakashi while looking at his genin with a solemn expression. It was all true. The Hokage explained it wasn't Kakashi's fault entirely multiple times, and he still felt like he was just trying to make him feel better. Ultimately he realized Sarutobi Hiruzen wasn't one to sugarcoat the truth. If the Hokage allowed the mission to happen even if he felt like he shouldn't have, then he was guilty too, and the same could be said for every person who had a voice in the matter. "It may not have been my fault entirely, but it was my responsibility. He was my responsibility. You both are my responsibility, which is why I'm going to make this right." Kakashi grabbed a scroll from his vest and unsealed it. Out of it came 2 little slips of paper, some other scrolls, a few books, and a crimson scroll with the Uzumaki crest in it that immediately caught Naruto's attention. "I was very lacking in your training. I honestly can't remember why. If I had a reason, it was a stupid one, and I see no point in thinking much about that anymore." Kakashi took both slips of paper and gave it to them. "I'll be working you in the ground. I'll make you both learn a proper taijutsu style. I'll teach you both ninjutsu and train your affinities. I'll teach you the basics of genjutsu, and I will also let the both of you specialize in a field of your choosing. I will make sure to get you proper instruction. Sadly for you, Naruto, because of your newest tool you'll be stuck with me for a while," finished Kakashi with an eye smile for the blonde. Much of what Kakashi just said caught the attention of the young genin. One of them in particular was now lodged on the blonde shinobi's brain. "What are affinities, sensei?" questioned Naruto with the backing of his pink-haired teammate. "Elemental affinities, We all have an affinity we're aligned to. That means jutsu from a certain element will come easier than others. It doesn't mean you can't use other elemental jutsu, but it is smart to start with your own," he said, somewhat relieved that both of his students seemed to be interested in the current topic. "First things first, the slips of paper I gave you are chakra paper. They're used to learn your affinities. You channel chakra into them and the reaction will show you what elemental nature you have. If it burns, it's fire; if it splits in two, it's wind; if it crumbles, it's lightning; if it turns to dust, it's earth; and if it soaks, it's water." Both genin did as instructed, and the results were a little shocking for Kakashi. Sakura's paper split in two and then both halves turned into dust. Naruto's also split in two, but his both halves of paper crumpled. It wasn't weird for people to have two affinities, but most often than not it implied some sort of elemental Keki-i Genkai. Kakashi, however, couldn't think of any that used these specific elements combined. He was also very intrigued by Naruto's lightning affinity. Kakashi and him were becoming more and more similar every day. He couldn't decide if that was a good thing. "That's impressing, my cute genin. You both have two affinities and you both share one. I'm well versed in Doton manipulation, so I'll have no problem teaching you, Sakura." "Is earth a good element, sensei?" she asked. "There is no good or bad element, Sakura. Each have their use and their own uniqueness." Kakashi also liked Doton manipulation a lot. He used it quite frequently. "As for you, Naruto, my affinity is also lightning. I'm the best sensei you could have gotten," he explained with a smirk, not that his genin could see it, but a smirk nonetheless. "Really?" asked Naruto, voice full of excitement at the prospect of sharing something like that with his cool sensei. Kakashi nodded and ruffled the boy's hair much to his annoyance before continuing. "Wind, however, is the rarest affinity in Hai no Kuni. An acquaintance of mine uses Futon Jutsu. I'll arrange a meeting." Both genin nodded and expressed their thanks to Kakashi for making sure they got the training they needed. Kakashi was honestly quite happy. He had two potential powerhouses in his team and he was going to make sure they were ready for everything. "From now on you both will get individual taijutsu training in the mornings," and Kakashi began listing their schedule: ninjutsu and genjutsu training together with me after lunch, as well as constant chakra control exercises and maybe picking up a weapon sometime down the line. "Sakura, I'm going to teach you the senju fighting style. It's not common these days, but I really think it fits you." He did believe that to be the case. Sakura's temperament reminded him a lot of a senju he met years ago. He got an excited nod as an answer. It seems like Sakura is in high spirits today. "Naruto, you will be learning the Uzumaki style of taijutsu." Kakashi saw how Naruto perked up at the name Uzumaki. "I'm not going to teach you, but a friend of mine knows the style better than anyone else in Konoha." Naruto's hands twitched in anticipation. "Who is it, Kakashi-sensei?" "You'll be training under Konoha's top taijutsu specialist. His name is Madogai. He has already agreed to teach you in the mornings." Naruto burned in determination and smiled widely, nodding his head excitedly. Madogai was possibly Kakashi's best and only friend. He was grateful for everything he had done for him and was grateful for him agreeing to teach Naruto. Sakura, the pink-haired genin, who was focusing her attention on Naruto's excitement, quickly looked at her sensei. "Come meet me here again at 8. Sakura fake saluted with a small smile. "Yes sir." Kakashi could only laugh at his cute genin's action. "And Naruto?" Kakashi looked at Naruto, who already had his attention focused on the silver-haired sensei. "Guy should be at the training ground 9, go meet him there by tomorrow." "Here," said Kakashi, giving Sakura a scroll and a book. "This is an anatomy book and the introduction to the art of healing." Kakashi then continued after seeing Sakura's curious gaze. "The scroll has the most basic of Iryo ninjutsu. I don't want to push you into the role of a medic, but your great chakra control means you'd be good at it. You don't have to learn any of this, but at least give it a thought, alright?" Sakura hummed and nodded in understanding. Naruto, you are smart, very smart, but your focus isn't on the academic side of things. One of these books is the geography of the great nations. As a shinobi it's important for you to know as much as you can about it. The other is a guide in strategy and deception. The ability you showed when you used to go on pranking sprees was incredible, good enough to fool even the Umbu. The blonde wanted to protest, but he knew his sensei wouldn't take no for an answer. What was some reading going to do to him anyway? He had already started reading the basic guide of Fuinjutsu he was given. This, said Kakashi, holding the scroll with the Uzumaki crest that had caught Naruto's attention earlier, is from Hokage-sama. It belongs to you. This is locked with a blood seal, which means only you will be able to open it. Sarutobi-sama said he gave stuff from the Uzumaki to you some time ago and was hoping you'd ask if there was something more, but apparently you didn't. Naruto was ashamed. Before he had thought Fuinjutsu was boring and uncool. He had just started reading about it recently and discovered he liked it. He wouldn't say it was easy, but it felt like it was meant for him. What he had, barely covered the basics of the art, and Naruto couldn't do more than a storage scroll as of now. He said you can go to him for help in Fuinjutsu when you need to. I believe there's more on the scroll than just that, but I advise you read it when you're alone. He was feeling really good about this whole being a good sensei thing. Do any of you have any doubts? Both genins shook their hands as an answer to his sensei. Well, that's it for today. The training starts tomorrow. Dismissed. After those words the genin started to leave to their respective homes. They had a big day tomorrow. There's something I need to talk to you about, Naruto, called out Kakashi. Both Tiangers shared a look. They had no idea what this was about. Naruto shrugged and walked towards his sensei. Sakura wasn't worried. She knew Naruto would tell her whatever this was about if she was meant to know, so there was no point in giving it much thought. Sakura left his teammate and sensei together. Come with me. Kakashi could have shunshined both him and his student to their destination if he wanted to, but he needed the walk to sort his thoughts and think about what he wanted to say. He didn't realize when they both got to the top of the Hokage monument and stood in the head of the Yondaime Hokage until Naruto spoke for the first time since the meeting. This is my favorite place in the village, you know, said Naruto. I used to come here to stare at the sunset when I was little. When Naruto was younger, this was his thinking spot, his place away from everything. For some reason, the monument made him feel less lonely. Is this about the Sharingan sensei? A good question. No, there's no need to talk about that just yet. I'll start training you soon enough. There's something important I need to tell you. You probably will have questions and I will answer them as much as I can, all right? Asked Kakashi. You could hear the worry in the man's voice. He didn't know what his student would think of him. The Hokage told me you're aware of the reason why the identity of your father was kept a secret. It was important to keep this from you until the time came when you would be able to handle the truth. Remember, I had a meeting with him today? Asked Kakashi, and Naruto nodded. Naruto could now see what this was about and his heart started beating very fast. Today it was decided that you not only are ready to know, you deserve to, said Kakashi. The Hokage asked me to tell you because your father and I were close. This was it, the moment Kakashi has been waiting for. You're the son of Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, and my sensei. The why Yondaime? B but. H how? Why? Naruto was shocked. To learn the person you admired so much was secretly your father was a lot to take in. Kakashi took a deep breath in order to better prepare to explain this to the blonde boy. Your father had many enemies. Konoha's Yellow Flash, the man responsible for single-handedly ending the Third Shinobi War, he annihilated a battalion of over 1,000 IWA shinobi by himself. Naruto listened to his sensei's explanation with the utmost attention. The Tsuchikage wouldn't have come after you, at least we don't think he would. It was war and we did what we had to do to survive. It is the shinobi we were worried about, bitter people who would go rogue if presented with the opportunity to get back at the yondaime by killing his only child. It wasn't just that, however. What do you mean? What you know about the Kyuubi attack is not the whole truth. The Baijuyu are sentient forms of chakra, they can't be killed. The only way to beat them is to seal them in a container, a person. These people are called Jinchuriki, the power of human sacrifice. Explained Kakashi. Things started to make sense for Naruto now. He knew his father defeated the Kyuubi the day he was born, but he didn't know how. All he knew was that the Hokage sacrificed himself with some special jutsu to defeat the fox. Am I one? Asked a worried Naruto. No, that's not what I meant. In most villages, Jinchuriki are ostracized and hated by the people they protect by simply existing. That was why the identity of our Jinchuriki was kept a secret, only the higher-ups knew we had one. Why? Most hidden villages use the Baijuyu as weapons, we don't. The only reason we had one was to keep a balance of power among the great nations. Naruto didn't understand exactly why this was related to him other than the fact that his father died fighting the Baijuyu. Did our Jinchuriki turn on us? No, there was a mastermind behind the attack. A Jinchuriki's seal weakens when giving birth. Naruto, your mother was the Jinchuriki, she was attacked while giving birth and the attacker broke the seal to destroy the village. According to the Hokage, it was a man wearing a mask. He used a sharingan to control the Kyuubi. How did my father stop him? We don't know. He sighed. We just know he tried to seal the Kyuubi inside you to protect the village, but he failed and the Kyuubi was set free. It was apparently the Kyuubi who told the Hokage about that man before disappearing. It was never seen again after that. The Kyuubi talked to Jiji. Asked Naruto. He wasn't sure if he was surprised, amazed, or worried. Kakashi nodded. I personally would take anything that comes from it with a grain of salt. Still, Sandaime-sama believes it to be true and I've never been one to question his judgment. Naruto was in turmoil, one question refusing to leave his brain. I was going to be a Jinchuriki? Asked Naruto. This was a lot to take in. It was overwhelming and Naruto was already in tears. Yes. Don't think too much about it, Naruto. Sensei was an amazing man, he loved you dearly and would have never done anything to harm you. The only reason I'm telling you this is because we don't really know what that man really wanted and could be one of the enemies you have to watch out for. Kakashi was surprised, he was honestly expecting Naruto to blow up. Tsutsuji was amazing at her job. Minato-sensei was like a father to me. Both of your parents took me in when I had no one. Naruto was surprised about that. He now understood what Kakashi meant when he said they were close. My mother died when I was but a toddler and my father. He killed himself when I was young. I used to be a lot like Sasuke back then, he at least had you as a friend. I made sure to push everyone away. My teammate and your father were the ones who saved me from myself back then. When they died I was lost. Kakashi suddenly became the one in need of comfort. He didn't even notice when Naruto put his hand on his shoulder, but he appreciated the gesture. Hokage-sama never told me not to approach you, I just didn't. When you were placed on my team I pushed you away instead of actually bonding with you. I'm truly sorry, Naruto, and I really hope you can forgive me. Kakashi greatly benefited from Inoichi's counseling sessions. He wouldn't have been able to express himself this way before. Naruto shook his head. It's okay, you don't need to apologize to Bia. His reassurance made Kakashi chuckle. Do you think we could have dinner together sometime? I would like to know more about them. Asked Naruto. He was hoping Kakashi would say yes, he really wanted this to happen. Yes, Naruto, I think I would like that. Answered Kakashi, giving Naruto an eye smile. Naruto stood up and started to walk towards the village. I'll see you tomorrow, Nii-san. said Naruto and quickly left afterwards. He didn't stay long enough to see a tear roll out of Kakashi's only visible eye. Nii-san. I like the sound of that. It was late at night already. Naruto had been crying a lot on his way to the Hokage Tower after his conversation with Kakashi. He was glad it happened but couldn't help but cry like he hadn't ever. It was good there was someone he could always go to, even if it meant just having a shoulder to cry on. Jiji, said Naruto after opening the window in the Hokage's office and stepping in. The Hokage in question had seen the whole thing through his crystal ball, so he knew the boy was coming. He was worried the boy would be mad at him when he saw him coming to his office, but he was ready for it. Yes, Naruto. The Hokage never got to finish his question because of the blonde boy launching himself at him and hugging him tightly. Hiruzen's eyes widened. Naruto's sudden hug surprised him, but he hugged the young boy back either way. Hiruzen could feel how Naruto's shoulder began to shake. He could hear the faint sniffles. Naruto had begun to cry on his Jiji's shoulders. The old man knew today had been eventful and tiring for this young child. It's all right, Naruto-kun, I'm here for you. Naruto cried himself to sleep in the arms of his grandfather that night. The Hokage had one of his Umbu guards take Naruto to his apartment so he could sleep on his own bed. He had a busy day coming. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, subscribe to my channel for more fan fictions like this, and goodbye.